Okay, great. Hello. So welcome to another session of self-inquiry and surrender meditation practice. I want to emphasize again a couple of points about the overall goal of the practice. So we're trying to direct our attention, quote unquote, inward. And now I wanted to compare it because this sort of metaphor came to mind. Imagine, in a way, it's not exactly the same thing, but imagine, you had to do a complicated math problem in your head all the time. That would take your attention away from the usual concerns of the world. You're focusing on that instead of what you'd normally be focusing on. That gives you a little bit of an idea of how you want to view this process, which is an intense focus on something which, in a sense, will cause ultimately the outside world, in a sense, to blur and become background. Your foreground attention, your main attention, should be on practice, and that will cause everything else to fade into the background. And Ramana Maharishi described it once. I think there's a rather beautiful description. He says, it'll be like gazing to a crystal. Because what happens is when you look inward like that, that blurring is like that. It's like the dazzling nature of a crystal. There's a sort of similarity there. And again, when you're trying to do this all the time, and I do encourage all of you to do it even right this second, that's when you're going to notice how often, in fact, you forget. Only when you try to do it all the time, you'll remember, will be like, oh my God, I didn't do it then. And people think, oh, it's a matter of, it is a matter of just forgetting. But we should know that forgetting happens because of the attachments. We forget because something else that we want or care about suddenly interfered. Basically. Although someone did mention just a moment ago, what about the mind getting tired? I just want to point out that's a great question. That very sense of exhaustion has to be recognized as a thought. Because you see, recognized as a thought, fed back into the practice. I want to say as well, that because that really goes to show you, see, surrender and self-inquiry are they seem like practices. They seem, that is to say, like effortful things that you're doing. And they will seem like that for a while. But ultimately, you are them. You are them, actually. The self, effectively, is in continuous inquiry all the time. The self is in continuous surrender. If you recall the exercise from yesterday, I said, what happens if you ignore everything? And we got to that point of recognizing if we drop the mind, then we enter a state of not knowing. And in that not knowing, which cannot be defined, about which we cannot say anything, we have to ask ourselves, does whatever remains when you ignore everything, does it do anything? No. Does it have a relationship with anything? No. Because in order to have a relationship to something, something must have boundaries, qualities, limitations. It must be in time and space, right? But all of those things we've been told to ignore. Once you ignore all the qualities, limitations, and boundaries, whatever remains, which we cannot speak, cannot be related to anything. In effect, the question is, whatever it is that remains, that unspeakable remnant, what is it effectively doing to so-called life? Anyone guess what I want to say? It's ignoring it. It's ignoring it. It's ignoring it. It's surrendering it in a way. You see, what remains has no relationship in some sense. It has no definable relationship, you might say, to the normal objects and events of so-called ordinary life. So in a sense, what remains is in a state of continuous non-reaction to everything. That's what's going on automatically. That is surrender. That is surrender, right? It, if we call it an it, which is misleading in a way, but so whatever, that remaining, whatever it is when you subtract away thought, that is already in what we are calling surrender. You see that? It is ignoring. What does it mean to ignore things? It means it's not having its attention linger on anything, right? And we know that its attention doesn't linger on anything because we've canceled out thought. So it's not thinking of anything, nor is it doing anything. That's essentially, not exactly, but essentially reality. That's how you should think of what the self is. The self is already in continuous surrender. You see that? Continuous, effortless surrender already, all the time. Or similarly, if you think about inquiry, inquiry is hunting, searching, moving the attention towards I. And in that process, it enters that dazzling crystal-like zone. But that's exactly what happens if you ignore everything. If you ignore everything, whatever remains is exactly doing that, you might say. It's exactly always, you might say, in like continuous self-contemplation. It's moving always towards itself. So it is in continuous automatic inquiry. You see that? So what's happening in inquiry and surrender as practices is we are mimicking the self, exactly. As if with effort. We're like putting effort into doing what is in fact already occurring automatically, effortlessly. There is a covering of, false beliefs, essentially a structure of false belief that's called identification, that makes it feel as if these practices are effortful. But if we then examine to whom the effort is occurring, it turns out that effort is also fictional. There's no effort. That's going to be the resulting realization of this effortful process. This has been going on all the time. So it's like it's as if, and I like using this analogy, someone is sitting in a bathtub and their head is 2 feet out of the water, but they think they're drowning. They're breathing air, but they think they're drowning. So you tell them, okay, let's just play a game. Let's pretend that you can breathe the air right now. Let's just pretend, and they pretend like that. And then what happens is because they were drowning, they were in a panic. They thought they were drowning. They were in a panicked state, right? And you say, let's pretend you aren't drowning. And by pretending they aren't drowning, they calm down. And then as they calm down, they realize, oh, I'm not drowning. Actually, I'm breathing the air. In fact, they were never drowning. It was just a delusion the entire time. This is sort of similar to what's going on. So what's happening is inquiry and surrender are like calming the mind down and then looking, right? Calming and then looking. And that looking is calming. And the calming is, in a sense, ultimately going to be looking. so that's what's happening. And then in that looking, like clarity can happen. Okay, so let's get into the practice. So let's start with inquiry, and let's just do 5 minutes together, and we'll talk about it. So here I'll just one more time. Basic instruction. Your basic sense of existing, your sense of I. Even saying your sense of I, it's already objectifying. And this problem, language objectifies automatically as if it's something over there. What we're looking for is you. Look for you. Where are you now? Okay, here goes. All right. Anyone want to talk about their experience?
I was just thinking, yeah, okay, I'm here. And then my mind travels all over. So I am there. And all my mind says something about future thing. Then I'm in that, I'm in that place, which place? And I cannot be that. And then I bring, so is that me worrying me, or I am in that worrying place or something like that. Then I said, okay, I am not, for a moment, I will surrender all those things. And I bring my attention back to me above all these things.
Right. Yes, exactly. So you're going from the objects, series of objects, right? It's going here and there.
Yeah,
and
using the surrender. Okay, let God takes care of it. In Tamil we say kadavul kapatvar, like that. So let God take care of everything. And I am not anywhere. I'm not here. I'm nowhere, the kind of thing.
So look, so I want to just comment on that. So rather than, I mean, nothing wrong with what you're saying, but rather than assert a belief, okay, in this particular case, right, about what is or is not going to be happening, right? When these worries arise, oh, is there a problem? 1 second.
It's fine.
It might be a...
No, it's fine. Don't worry. Let me see whether
little power issue.
I don't know whether that one is. Will continue, please.
So rather than giving yourself a belief about what's going to happen, notice those worries and ask yourself, whom are they occurring? You see what I'm saying? Who is worrying? See what's happening. You're having a worry. You're telling yourself, "Oh, God take care of it."
Yeah.
Which is a fine belief. I mean, that's helpful. That's helpful for surrender anyway. But in inquiry, what you want to do is notice the worry is happening seemingly to you.
Yes.
The question is, who are you? Who is the worrier? Do you see what I'm saying? There's the reason you care about the worry is because you believe you're having it.
Yes, correct.
So you're using one strategy, which is to say, yeah, I don't have to worry about it because God will take care of it, which is true, but in whatever way God does take care of it. But what I want you to recognize is the inquiry strategy is, who's having this worry in the first place? See, the worry, do you see that? The worry is arising in your mind. But whose mind? Meaning, see, the worry is here as an object. Like, okay, I'm worried about this thing I have to do later today, how it's going to turn out. It arises to you, okay? One way is to say, okay, you know, I don't need to worry about this. I shouldn't worry about this, or something will take care of this, right? That's a way of trying to like dispose of the worry, which is fine. Again, that's one way of dealing with it. But what I'm trying to suggest is the worry is also itself an object which prompts the question of, like, this worry is happening on a kind of movie screen that's being watched by me. But where is this me? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like you use that as a kind of mirror. It's mirroring back you. The question is, where is this you? Where is it? You see what I'm saying? I want you to see the there's a mystery here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, correct.
As soon as you say, because the thing is, the reason you care about the worry in the first place is because you believe it's yours.
Yes.
That's why you're trying to then like minimize it. But the question is, who are you? That's the ultimate way of minimizing it, really, in a way, you could say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So that's but look, you know, you noticed, right? Like in the process of inquiry, you see so many places where your mind goes.
Yes.
Right? Those are attachments, you know? And then you're absolutely, you bring it back. That's exactly correct. But I want you to notice, right? Because as soon as you say, yeah, but who is this person? Right? What's happening is, right, there's I like also using this analogy. It's an old analogy, but again with the movie, right? It's as if I've used used this many times, but it's as if you're watching a movie. You're watching a movie, and there's a character, and the character is having all these problems, right? If you forget you're watching a movie, you've forgotten it's just a movie, right? You have somehow you somehow believe for a moment you're the character. You believe you're the character in the movie,
correct.
right? The character in the movie has these worries.
Yes, you
They
cry
want
for
to
it.
know, okay, how are they going to save the children from the villain or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And then you're scared.
Yes, correct.
The moment you remember it's just a movie, it doesn't matter how they save the children from the villain, or even if they save the children from the villain, it's just a movie. It's not your issue. You see what I'm saying?
Correct.
That's what inquiry is hitting at. Like, who is the person actually having this issue? Is it you? Are you the one? Are you the one actually having these emotions? See, and so that I, but of course, when we ask that question, we enter a space of not knowing. And then you go deeper and deeper and deeper into that. Because even that not knowing is known, So that's the road to which suddenly like expands outwards if you follow it long enough, basically. Anyone else?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to that. So today I was able to kind of see the separation, and I had this visual as if there's a tarp, that's covering me, and all the external sounds and everything were kind of on the tarp, and I could sense the separation that I was observing what was happening on the tarp, so to speak. And then when I recognized that, but then I wanted to dwell in that, silence, that is where it also occurred to me that you need the support of the mind to go dwell there. So that distinction, so trying to detach the mind. So that is where I got a little entangled. If I want to dwell there, I kind of know the separation, but then I need the mind to help me dwell there. So that is, if you can.
Yeah, right. Well, the irony is, right, so yeah, you're exactly right. So the to try to quote unquote dwell in the silence does require the mind, and so that's why we should note, right, the silence is something which is being experienced, and it's a sweet experience, which is why I want to dwell there, of course. But ironically, the very best way to dwell there is to immediately question it and say, who's experiencing it? That is the best way to dwell in the silence, is to move towards the experiencer of it. It's like, in order to be there, you have to keep moving. If you try to stay there, then you'll drop it eventually. Because what happens is you'll forget. You see, you'll lose the mind, you'll lose your attention into it, and then you'll drop out of it eventually. So if you want to stay in it, ultimately, the best way to do it is to recognize the silence is an object, it's an experience, I'm aware of it, where am I, right? We don't want to content ourselves with anything less than what is perfectly permanent and incapable of being lost. Because basically what's happening is, there's like, as you move towards self, there's like a treasure house of tempting sensations, which are like sweet and beautiful. And they invite you to sort of linger there, like, don't go any further. This is already sweet enough. And then you lose yourself there, and then you drop out. It's like a little heaven, right? A little loka, which you're visiting for a while. Then you forget yourself there, and then before you know it, something's taken you. So if you want to ironically, to experience the continuous sweetness, you have to keep moving and do not get tempted. You have all these stories in mythology like that, like, if you want to, when they visit the underworld and different, mythologies, they're like, don't touch anything. Don't touch anything. If you touch something, you'll be trapped there. You keep moving. So,
but isn't the act of moving also, doesn't the act of moving also involve the mind and the thought?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So that's a necessary element of thought. We have to use thought to break thought. Ultimately, you have to have a single thought, a singular thought, which is going to burn up all the other thoughts, and then, as Maharishi puts it, it burns itself up. So you can't abandon. You are not capable of fully abandoning thought, because the one who attempts to do that is themselves but a thought. So the one who is the seeker can't jump to zero thoughts. From many thoughts, you can't jump to zero thoughts. It's not a possibility. That's just self-deceit. So from many thoughts, we have to go to
What was
one
it,
thought,
what?
self-deceit. Yeah, self-deceit. Yeah, you can't go to zero thoughts
Mm.
directly. You'll just fall back into distraction, which is your ordinary habits. We have to destroy the ordinary habits by concentrating the mind on one single thought. That single thought, like I said, will destroy the other thoughts, and then by God's grace, will annihilate itself and reveal perfect truth.
Mhm.
Okay, let's do another 5 minutes. Here we go. All right. Anyone want to share their experience?
As I closed as I started thinking that how did I spend my whole life not thinking about this, and instead of running around with all stuff, then suddenly I realized mind always runs around, but for the first time I was present here in the building, in this place. It was so clear in my closed eyes, which I've never seen before.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Because
Exactly.
it goes all over as I close. But for the first time, I was aware that I'm in this building, here, sitting in this. It was new.
Startling clarity. Yeah. Yeah. That's what Maharishi says, this alone is awakeness. Everything else is dreaming, right? In your normal thoughts, you're basically asleep into the thought, right? So here we're having our conscious try to wake up in a way. Now, I will also say it's interesting because what you just mentioned, right? The sense of all my life, where have I been? What have I been doing? And I want you to note as well, this very thought that all my life I've been distracted, right? Is itself a thought? Is itself a thought?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So and this notion also applies to as you do the practice. Like for example, you say, okay, I was trying to do it all day, but 3 hours went by, I didn't do it. Right? No, that's a thought. That's a thought. It's actually a useful thought. We do need these kinds of at some level we need these sort of practice related thoughts, but also simultaneously we should know it's a thought. So all these thoughts of time, what happened during a certain span of time, are thoughts. And implicitly we should know what that means is that when we say that we were or were not awake or aware during a certain span of time, whether it be 3 hours or most of our life, we are implicitly identifying with the person in that gesture. I don't mean to say, it's never enough to simply say, oh, I'm not the person. That's just a thought itself. But, but to note, right? Oh, ask yourself that question. Am I the one who was distracted in a way? That's the question. Were you the one who was distracted all this time? Is that you is the question. The one who was asleep in the dream of life, is that actually you? That's the question. Because who are you in the situation, right? The real truth is, right, effectively is, there is an unblinking, lidless eye, EYE, which is observing, which is never distracted, has never been distracted, right? There's a thought of an imaginary person who is distracted, essentially. So so we're trying to draw ourselves back to notice this web of assumptions. There's this interconnected web of assumptions that all reinforce each other about me being that experiencing, individual experiencing entity who could be distracted, the one who could be distracted or the one who could meditate. But are you in fact that person? That's the question. Anyone else?
I didn't have any thoughts, but I had only vision, and I was really completely, maybe I would say, picture of Vishnu or somebody came. I said, total surrender, that. So no other thought, no other worry, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The vision kept in mind for a long time, and also I thought of this thing, for whom this vision is occurring,
right?
And where, so am I feeling it, or who made me think of this vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I'm trying to dwell on that, but the vision made me fix my attention. Nobody, nothing, no thought, nothing of the sort. That's
So
it.
mind became concentrated, and then the vision occurred, and then you said, "Who's experiencing this vision?"
Yeah. Who is
exactly.
experienced the vision,
Yes.
and who made me experience the vision.
So,
Mm.
I'll note again, those are slightly different questions,
Mm.
right? So when you say who made the vision, now you're
Not made the vision.
Oh.
Who is helping me with that vision, or how did that vision, like who is experienced the vision?
yeah, that's the
all.
key point.
That's
Because,
it.
because the
Yeah.
point is the
Yeah.
vision, there's a vision,
Yeah.
which is the object,
Yeah.
and there's I.
Mm.
I is a subject,
Yeah.
which is the sense of your knowledge. You are here right now,
Yeah.
even having this vision.
Yeah.
Right? When you have the vision, there's three things that you know immediately. There's the vision, there's me,
Mm.
and I'm not the vision.
Yeah.
Those three things you know.
Mm.
So again, we normally attend to the first piece of information, which is the thing, the vision.
Mm.
We're trying to attend to the other piece.
Mm.
Well, really the other two pieces, I guess you could say, right? I'm not this vision. Where am I? Where am I in this picture?
Mm.
That's what you're hunting for. So always try to turn your attention away from, normally like directed out. Even though it's a vision, it's still out.
Yes.
You want to turn away to the looker. Where is the looker? Where is the looker? That's our continuous preoccupation in self-inquiry anyway. Anyone else?
So Akhilesh, so our model of things is that there is a stream of thoughts, and every thought is triggers a question of who is having this thought. So the question is, mentally, we need to not just wonder who's having the thought, we need to attempt to answer it also, and that would generate the next thought.
Yeah, we're attempting to answer. Exactly. This is not merely just asking the question mutely. We're trying to turn our attention towards the place in our experience where the knowledge of our existence is coming from. When you say who's having this thought, what we're really saying is, I know, quote unquote, seem to know that I'm having this thought. I'm having this thought. I am the thought haver. I'm the experiencer of thought. Well, we seem to know that. So the question is, when we ask this question, who am I, or who's experiencing thought, or who's aware of this, or where is this, any of these, where am I, well, any of these questions, we're trying to attend to turn our attention towards however it is that we know that we are there. We seem to be.
Got it.
So
that will generate a stream of thoughts. But I thought that, again, correct me if I'm wrong, the model of things is that at some point, the mind will quieten down. It will result in chitta shuddhi, whatever you want to call it, or the attachments will weaken, and the mind will blank out, and it'll be calm, and then your identity will be revealed. But if you have a stream of thoughts where every time you ask who's having this thought and you attempt to answer it, and that generates another thought, where is the opportunity for the calmness or the quietness
it will calm, because it will calm, because when you ask this question, when you attempt to look for I, in that moment, you get a little, even for, it's just for a split second, the mind will pause, very, very slight, even if it's only extremely short duration. So in that, eventually the duration will become longer. But in that pause, there's different ways of thinking about it, but essentially you're experiencing some modicum of peace, right? And that little bit of peace that you experience even for a moment will help motivate the further practice, right? And as you practice further, therefore, the mind will slowly, like a plant turning towards the sun, will orient towards that, orient away from the normal attachments. And in that process, the practice deepens, and the sort of quote unquote pauses become longer and longer. More and more peace will be experienced. And you're right, the mind will become more and more relatively silent. But that's not the end of the process. That relative silence, or so-called blankness, you can put it how you like, is itself still still a thought, basically. So it's our responsibility to continue the inquiry at that point, right? To be relentless and say, yes, even this silence is being experienced by me. Where am I? So you are hunting for an answer, right? You're trying to, when we think this question, we're trying to find where is this light coming from? I say I all the time. My entire life is based on I. I have this issue. I have this desire. I have this past. I have this family. I. And even I am seeing, I'm hearing, I'm thinking, I am imagining, like even these most intimate functions, I'm doing them all. I'm experiencing them all. So where is that piece of information coming from in our experience? We seem to experience this fact. What exactly is that experience? It's like you're looking for, you know, I use this analogy. It's like, suppose you had a third arm, and you could feel all the sensations on it, right? And you're like, well, I feel this third arm, but where is it, right? Where is it? You're looking for it. You're like, it must be here somewhere because I'm feeling it, but where? So in that process, you move the mind towards quietness, and then you examine even that quietness, and the quietness turns out to be a reflection of yourself, of the truth.
Because you say on your website that we need to relentlessly and mercilessly pursue the question of who am I, where am I? But on the face of it, pursuing this question results in a feverish action. There's a feverish stream of thoughts. Who am I? Who am I? But what you're saying is, as you keep on doing it, naturally a certain calmness will set in, and the inter-question durations will lengthen it, and you will.
Yeah, those are not contradictory, because as the mind becomes calmer relative to the attachments, it nevertheless becomes even more powerfully intent on finding, you know, the answer, basically. So, and as the mind becomes calmer, generally speaking, in fact, it is easier. The answer becomes more easy to see because the mirror is becoming more polished. You're looking for who am I, and you're looking in a mirror. The mirror was once dim and smeared. Now it's clearer and, you know, shinier. But still, you have to look into it and recognize what's going on. So there's still that going on. So the feverish intensity increases because as the mind becomes calmer, as you do this practice more, as you taste the sweetness of the practice, because the sweetness of the practice is a reflection of the sweetness of the self, right? As that happens, it will become all the more painful when you fall away from it, right? Real life and identification, when it does occur, will become more and more painful, and therefore the seeker will become more and more desperate to find something permanent, not just however long the practice is. Doesn't matter how long the practice is. You want something permanent. That's what we're looking for.
Become more one-pointed.
Will arise as the mind becomes calmer. Actually, everything orient towards the singular necessity of finishing things, basically.
Okay, thank you.
So I have an observation, like, you know, even I was able to see that, like, it's not me but my body, okay, when I'm asking the question. But even for the thought process also, I had for some time, yeah, even though the body is separate, thoughts are mine. But there are situations where I can see that the thoughts also are not mine. I'm observing the thoughts are also out of body, like, you know, but there is one thought that is observing these thoughts, like, you know, train of the thoughts coming from somewhere else. I don't know, like, you know, that is a kind of because that might be a kind of delusion, like, you know, my thoughts are not, the thoughts are not my thoughts, but other like, you know, I'm just an observer observing that.
No,
There is only one thought that makes me to observe. The other thoughts are not my thoughts. Okay, like, you know.
Well, okay, so they're not you. Let's put it that way, right? So those thoughts are, you're exactly right. Those thoughts are things that you're experiencing. Therefore, in some sense, they're not you because you're experiencing them. So that observer, so-called observer thought, then is what you're looking for, because you somehow know I am observing these thoughts, other thoughts, observing all the regular thoughts that occur. So that sense of I am the observer, then it's your task to look for, where is that knowledge coming from?
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. You
know, because in some sense, we know, right? The cardinal rule of self-inquiry is this: that what you are aware of, you are not. Because if you were it, then you couldn't experience it. So we know, in some sense, already at the beginning of our quest, that here's the thing: we have this seeming thing in the waking state called self-awareness. We know that we are. But I just said that what you're aware of, you can't be. So what's the inevitable conclusion? Logically, we already know where this is leading, that what you are aware of as yourself in the waking state is not you. That's the magic at the end of the rainbow, which is that the ego itself is an object, which is cognized in some sense by the deeper self. But the question is, how can the ego itself know this fact? So, that's the magic of the process, because it will unravel, and the unraveling somehow shine. The ego will perceive its own end, its own boundary, But
That's where I'm having a problem saying that we are hunting that ego, which we will to
Yes.
reveal this. So
yes,
it's
yes,
like
we are. We're hunting ourselves. Because see, that's the gateway. It's the gateway.
So there is that game going on. So when
Yes.
you said this eye is watching, which has nothing to do, and this one which is playing around is getting hunted, and it knows it's getting hunted.
Yes,
Is it?
right. Well, yeah, sure. Yeah,
So
exactly
we are in
right.
that stage. Now
Yeah.
we know the thought is not us. So it's already, the gap has come between the how we used to feel every thought is me to already observing it. That gap has come.
Yeah, well, good, exactly. And then it's now turning towards the observer. Because even the idea of the observer is itself a thought. That's what I'm trying to get at, right?
Yeah.
So we get to this point of I'm observing,
Yes.
but that's still a question.
Yes.
Like, okay, well, where am I? Because thing is, you know that you're observing.
Yes.
It means the fact of your being an observer is itself a fact in your experience.
And we didn't give that a lot of observation, I think, because we were too busy running with
Yes. You didn't notice this simple fact of
Something.
your observation.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were running with these thoughts.
That's right.
It became our main thing.
That's right. Exactly.
Now we are slowly telling that that's not main, and the focus has to be the observation, not the running with it.
100%. Exactly. That's right. That's
So
exactly
that's
right.
the exercise we are doing.
That's the
right
exercise we're
now.
doing. Yes.
So that's why we have to go on ignoring the thoughts which are saying that's not me, that's not me.
Correct. And then you have to hunt for what are you then, right? Because that's only one string of the pendulum.
Yes.
Pendulum is I'm not.
not.
That's necessary. But then who am I?
Then the next phase.
Yes. Who am I? Who is observing? Yes. So yeah.
Yeah, I like negate is okay, but who am I when I say I might answer with my own ideas and convictions, what I read and things like that, right?
Yes.
So I might be answering all the
Correct.
series of
Arguing
who am
that
I am not
yes.
this, I'm not okay, this I read about it, I'm in university, everything I can be saying that.
Yes.
But negating would maybe.
Well, no. But see, all those ideas are themselves thoughts. You have
Yes.
to notice that, right?
Yeah.
So all those scriptural ideas, conceptions, blah blah blah
Yeah.
about what I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who is that happening to
Yes,
precisely?
that
You
is
have to
my-
notice these two are thoughts, and turn towards your inner sense of the one who's observing them.
Mm.
You're looking for yourself.
Mm.
Where are you? Remember this fact. You know or seem to know that you are.
Mm.
So how do you know that? In your own experience. You're right. You're absolutely right. When you look for this,
Mm.
you get a blinding series of preconceptions.
Yes, correct.
Oh,
That's what I.
So yes. So you have to go through all of those preconceptions. You have to keep noticing. This too is a preconception. This too is a preconception. This too is a preconception. Who's experiencing? Keep on moving back. And finally, you're going to cut through this dense, cloud of layered thinking that blinds you from the obvious, basically. Because it is obvious, actually, something very obvious. But it's so obvious it can't be seen. It's too obvious.
Mm.
It's hidden, blindingly hidden in plain sight. That's what's happening here. Let's do a little bit of surrender before we conclude, because that's also lovely and important. So just to remind you of the surrender practice, and anyway, it's the flip side of inquiry is just what you're trying to do is you're trying to remain very vigilant, very watchful, any thought that arises, and I say any thought, but really it could be anything, any perception, any feeling, anything that moves in the mind, just recognize this is just a movement of the mind. It's not reality, right? You don't have to use those words. You can use those words if you want, but the point is to recognize it. So when I say ignore it, really what I mean is that recognition. So this has nothing, this essentially has nothing to do with me. And, don't employ your willpower or focus, your deliberate focus. Don't allow your deliberate focus to move towards that. Basically, that burdensome sense of effort should not go towards it. I know you're all just sort of sitting listening to me right now, so it's not a big deal to do that right now. The real task will be in life, keep this up, to protect your fortress of relaxation, right? The fortress of inner relaxation is guarded by centuries of effortful, watchful, kind of identification of the thoughts as they come in. Because thoughts are going to say, this is the situation, like this, things are happening, you have to act in a certain way, or what should you do? Right? Any questions, any question like, by the way, should I do X or Y? That's a red flag question. That's a question you should notice that and don't touch it with a 10-foot pole, basically. The process of surrender, or inquiry for that matter, does not take positions directly on what you should or should not do. It says, look, am I the decision maker in inquiry? Am I the decision maker? And in surrender, it says, I don't know the answer to this question, but it doesn't involve me. I'm not the decision maker, basically. So it doesn't take a position, yes or no, on any particular question. It finesses the issue by just, I'm not touching this. I'm not touching this. So let's try that right now for 5 minutes. All right. Anyone want to share their experience?
At one point, it started to go to sleep.
Yeah, that can happen.
To the end of my,
Yeah.
maybe a minute or so, it just would have dropped off.
Yeah. So that's surrender is very relaxing, and that can lead to sleep. Now, I want to say a couple of things about that. It's not some great horrible thing if you do happen to sleep for a little bit, frankly. But yeah, I mean, if you are getting enough sleep, and this happens, then you want to try to notice, if you can, obviously, that the sleepiness is coming on. Recognize it as a thought to be ignored, basically. But at the same time, there's no need to torture yourself or anything like that. If you sleep for a minute or an hour or whatever it is that you do, that's fine. It's not a problem. But yeah, definitely. And so, it's said in one of the Upanishads, in fact, in Mandukya Upanishad, right, Gaudabada, who advocates essentially surrender, at the very end of the process of the mind going inward like this, there's kind of two paths, right? One leads to sleep or some variety of sleep, and the other leads to clarity. So you try to avoid the sleep path, if you can notice it in time, basically. But yeah, it can definitely happen because surrender is relaxing. You see that? So it makes sense.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I was chasing it, and now it's going to sleep.
Yeah.
That was 2 days.
Yeah, exactly. And surrender is, the idea is we're trying, we are basically just putting in effort to keep ourselves relaxed. The only reason we need effort is because we have profoundly rooted habits of unrelaxation.
Yes.
So to unwind the unrelaxing habits, we have to put effort in. That's all.
Yes.
Anyone else?
So in
Any
the in the self-inquiry, every thought is followed by a question of who is the thought coming to, and an attempt to answer it, and then that generates this. You have then the stream of thoughts. Whereas in the surrender, you just ignore a thought. Of course, even in the inquiry, how you answer the question is up to chance, or there's a variability there. Whereas in the surrender, what determines the next thought? You don't entertain it with saying who is ignoring.
Yeah. Well, what you're doing is when you surrender, right? So what you're trying to notice is this situation too. You see, it's not like not everything is an obvious discrete thought, like a verbal thought that occurs to you or an image that occurs to you, right? Every second you can treat as another thought. This experience, whatever this experience is something to be ignored. And to keep waking yourself up to that fact, because that's what you're trying to do, right? Every second, whatever the experience is, whatever it is trying to put you to sleep. You can view it that way. It's trying to put you to sleep into it. In a way, it's all attempts to make you sleep.
Every day we do that to go to sleep.
You're right, in a way, yes.
That is the way it has got used to.
Yes.
Put the thought away and go to sleep.
Right. But what I mean is, even normal waking life is a kind of sleep, right?
That's
Yeah. So what happens in surrender is, as you start noticing this too is a thought to be ignored, the thoughts to be ignored become subtler. They become subtler. So just like inquiry, the movement of the stream of thoughts becomes subtler. But because what happens is it's basically the same idea in the sense that as you're surrendering, you are you're going to progressively move backwards towards I. Why? Because when you move away from the objects, there's only one place your attention can move, and your attention therefore moves towards I automatically. As it does that, the mind quiets, it calms, and therefore the objects become more subtle. The mind might become quieter, just like an inquiry. And still you're trying to notice this quiet experience is also an experience. Don't get lost in it. Don't get absorbed in it. Don't lose my focus in it. Keep remembering the vision. Keep remembering that, this is not me, right? That's what surrender is. So in that process, the objects become subtler and subtler and subtler, and you move closer and closer and closer to I. So it's really the same process in the end.
So you were moving away and then, but in turn you were moving inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Away
That's
from
right.
the
That's
thoughts,
right. Right.
Because
towards
absence of thought is also a thought.
Sorry?
Calmness or absence of thought is also a thought.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's a subtler thought, you might say. Yes, it's still a thought, correct. Because it comes and goes, therefore it's a thought.
in the beginning, it is confusing,
Yes,
but as the practice.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Practice is the teacher.
Because the first time you
Yeah.
hear it, it's whatever.
Yes,
whatever.
yes.
Yesterday when I heard for the first time, it was.
Mm.
But as I am inquiring like that, I can see the process.
Excellent. Yes, yes, exactly. The process teaches you the process.
Yes.
This process teaches it to you.
First it is,
it
yeah,
unfolds.
the mind is lost.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
that's
does.
very
Because of
normal.
Hearing
Yeah.
it first time.
That's
And it's
right.
unknown.
That's right, exactly.
But today it made little more sense than yesterday.
Great. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah, first time, first time was little
Ah.
bit worry, a little bit distracted. Second time, nothing.
Yeah.
And third time is kind of intermediate. little
Uh-huh,
bit.
uh-huh,
It
uh-huh.
can go back to not the square one, maybe middle square.
Yeah.
And again, fourth time is kind of
Exactly.
really
Process.
getting, that's more like
Yes.
worry, definitely surrender makes you worry less.
Yeah.
And
Yes, it
surrender
does.
makes you mitigate the thoughts nicely.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah. And you can see, right, between these two
freedom is
practices,
there.
right,
Mm.
which one usually, people
Both are
often
needed, I feel.
well,
Mm.
you can definitely use both, or if you find yourself strongly preferring one, it's no problem. Each one is a complete path in itself.
Mm.
You can use them both, but you can just use one. Each one is sufficient.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the beginning, but afterwards.
And after-
everything becomes-
yeah, right, exactly. That's true. And in the end, they emerge
Yeah,
anyway.
imagine. But I feel the negating works better than asking who am I. But when it happens, is like all preconceived notion comes up. In the negation, I
You
at
find it
least feel
easier.
that easier in the sense, okay, definitely I know that. not
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
There's something more to it.
Yes.
It's not that that is working better than especially from the preconceived notion.
Yeah. No, you're right. So look, often if you feel negation is better than more surrender might be more your thing. It might be more your. People tend to resonate like, oh yeah, this makes more sense to me. One of the practices often makes more intuitive, resonant sense with them, and they should practice that more. That's fine, no problem. I'll also say one more thing, which is, since we're doing these sessions for the next few days, I highly encourage you to try implementing them continuously. Try it, and see what obstacles come up. And then you're welcome. I'll ask you, what obstacles come up tomorrow, and we can talk about them. All right. So thank you, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a behavior.
Absolutely. Yes, it is.
And the more
Okay, I'll
you
see
are
you guys
aware of it,
tomorrow
the more
morning.
life
Yeah.
itself becomes easier to